Hello everyone, this is a return to my UV mapping project, which actually was never supposed to be a UV mapping project primarily. It's rather a modeling project of a Chevy Vega, which you can see here. It's supposed to be a 1971, but the one I've done is got 72 features, like the 72 wheels and the 72 grille. I'll see about what I'm going to do about that later. The main problem with it right now is that it has no interior model, so that's the next thing we're going to do. Here are some actual photos of real Chevy Vegas from the 70s, mostly 71s. And they were unusual in that they looked like muscle cars but had four-cylinder engines. They didn't have power brake standard. They didn't have power steering standard. In general, they were very Spartan. They were so small they could be loaded like this in a railway car vertically. And they eventually came up with sport versions like the GT on the right there, but they were always basically economy cars. They were ideal for hot rodding, though, because they were very lightweight. Don Yanko, who is sort of Chevy's equivalent to Carroll Shelby, had a program of modifying Corvairs in the 60s that he called Stingers. And when the Vega came out, he started using the Stinger name for turbocharged and V8 versions of the Vega. Mostly they were turbocharged, though. This is an LT1, one of the only ones he built. And amateur hot rodders, of course, did a lot more than this. And they still do today because the car is very lightweight and it can take a V8 engine and a lot of standard muscle car era components. So I thought it would be an ideal model to put in the new Street Rod 3 game, even though that project is dragging along very slowly. And when it turned out that that project was going to be very long running, I figured, well, I can use the model for other things. I can use it for, or on trains, or red line, something like that. There's a period advertisement of it next to a Camaro. And there's the Street Rod 3 site. They've got a fair amount of work done on it already, although very little of it has been released to the public. They have some demonstration videos. They have a Facebook page as well, you can see here. They've already built a lot of models, you can see there. But I figured they haven't built the Vega, and we need the Vega if we want the game to be realistic, because you need an entry-level car, you know, for when you start out the game with almost no money. Maybe a Nova would be a good choice, too. But the Vega is much lighter than a Nova. So, that's an idea. And very, very few Vegas appear in games. I don't know if any have appeared in games yet. Here's a YouTube video, screen shared, of their alpha, which is not a public alpha yet. Hopefully it will be very soon. It's already over a year old, which kind of bothers me. But there it is, anyway. Much of the Street Rod game, of course, takes place in a garage, of course. Then anyway, I made a copy of the original, or the latest version of the Vega model, so that I wouldn't be damaging the original. And I'll show you how I do interior models. This is the same way I did it in Redline, actually. So anyway, I start with a copy of the original model so that I don't damage the original model. And I'll extrude downward from the windowsills, the way I would do in Redline. And this sounds really crude, and it is, but in gaming, you are compromising all the time. The realism is never really 100%, and it's not a wonderful idea to go all out on polys, because it will slow down your frame rate even on a fairly powerful computer. It's usually better to have good textures and good environmental mapping and things like that, rather than a million polys. But here I'll give a brief version of my selecting all the vertices on the sill for extrusion. In reality, it took me longer than this because I'm relearning Blender now that they've gone through several versions of it since I was last using it routinely. And a lot of the changes I find frustrating, but, you know, people still love this program, and I can still get what I want out of it once I figure out the changes that have been made. So there I am going around the sills. Clearly not the way a real car is built, but this isn't a real car. This is a model for a game. And as you'll see, it doesn't look so bad when you're done. So anyway, going around the sills here. To select multiple vertices in Blender, you use Shift right-click, which is a little bit strange. And that was partly what had me confused, is that I was doing Control right-click, like in Windows Explorer. That's not how you do it. I also was used to left-click because the Mac version is left-click. Or was originally. Maybe they've changed it now. So anyway, I extrude down close to the belly of the car, but not all the way, because I don't want it to accidentally overlap and stick out. Then I have to make room for the wheel wells, and I'll fine-tune this later. Double checking everything there. That mistake of looping it around like that is a result of the Control right-click instead of the Shift right-click. That was my whole problem. That was wasting a huge amount of my time. A lot of the instructions for Blender online could be a little bit easier to follow. They give you a lot of information you can't use, and they fail to give you a lot of information you do need. And the menus in the app used to be a lot more intuitive. This is something I think they could revert to, because there's really no reason to have counterintuitive menus. It's just not a good idea generally. So there I am, fine-tuning it. This will be much cleaner later after I get rid of the body model, because that is indeed what I'll do. I'll disconnect the shell of the interior from the body model, select it, then invert the selection, and that will enable me to delete the body model while leaving the interior model intact, without having to delete every single vertex of the body, which would take forever and is totally unnecessary. And this is indeed the technique that I used when I was modeling for Redline. Here I knocked out the windows too, because it made it a little bit easier to get the vertices to select. It could be my imagination, but I think that it used to be easier to select vertices in Blender than it is in the current version. I might be out of practice also, but I'm still a little bit suspicious the interface could be a little bit better. There I am, knocking the windows out. And of course I'm going to jump over a lot of this, because I want this video to be only 10 minutes long naturally. And then the next part will also be shortened and so on. I'll try to do one video for each step. Here we're just doing the shell of the interior model. So select the interior model as it is here, jumping way ahead. Invert the selection. Delete all the other junk, and then only the stems of the rear view mirrors are still attached, so get rid of them. And then we have the shell of an interior model, which of course will be much refined. So in any case, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.